All right, so this is the last session of the day. Hope you guys still have enough energy to last through this last talk. Actually, Lawrence was just reminding me that I'm the man between you guys and the beer that's happening tonight. So hope you don't hate me for this. It's not my choice. Just blame Soup for picking the time slots. But what I want to talk about today is Invisible Apps. I'm Alan, by the way. I'm a developer advocate at PayPal and Braintree. Just a quick one-slider, Braintree, if you haven't heard of Braintree before, it's basically a full-stack payments platform that enables developers or merchants to accept payments within their apps, mobile apps or web apps. And back in 2013, PayPal acquired Braintree, and that's why we're under the same family right now. So back to my talk, we're going to be talking about invisible apps today. So who has actually heard about invisible apps or have heard of the term? Not too many people, good. So whatever I tell you today, you're going to believe me. So before you make any guesses, it's not about hiding your home screen apps from your girlfriend or from your significant other. It's actually a real term. It's a real concept that's, I think it was coined a couple of years back. But lately, there's been a trend of invisible apps. And there's actually quite many interpretations of it if you actually Google it or look it up. So what I'm talking about today is sort of my view on it and what it means for developers. So to start off, I don't know if you guys have heard about this app before. It made a noise I think a year ago. It's called the Invisible Boyfriend. And it's essentially an app that lets you engage with a virtual social partner. And there's also a female version of this, because I see some of you guys with glowing eyes are intrigued about this concept already. So you can go Google it on your own. It's a real app. But I call it more of a service because it's not actually an application that you install. When you register for this at this Invisible Boyfriend site, you're basically getting a number that you can text to and you can actually start conversations with. Now, the conversations would look something like this. And this is how a normal interaction would look like. Now, when I was building this slide, I was almost sure that the guy that's behind this number is probably a real person, because the conversation is really coherent. But after hearing Justin's talk, it could be Watson, so I don't know. But as you can see, there's no UI here, right? It's UI-less, so that's the invisible concept, where the whole thing is such a service, it's all living inside the text messaging app. And this isn't the only app that follows this model. There's also other apps like Magic, which is a startup out of the US, which also did make some noise as well. They're all featured on Product Hunt and on TechCrunch as well. And it basically lets you defer your chores or your tasks to a trained operator. So there is a real person behind. If you go and ask for groceries, for example, he'll go to different places to pick up your grocery list and then deliver all the groceries to you. So this is, again, the UI-less model, the invisible model, and the engagement is all done through text messaging. And if you're interested more about this type of model of apps, you can find a full list on Product Hunt. So if you just go to producthunt.com, just punch in invisible apps, there's a list of them, a category of invisible apps. And some of them are actually quite interesting. But the question is this really the way to go, right? Having absolutely no interface between your application and your user. It's probably not suitable for all types of apps. If your app is entirely a service that you're trying to provide the user with, it highly depends on a core service, then maybe it makes sense, maybe not. But if your app is even slightly more complex than that and needs to display rich content like images or videos to the user, then that's definitely not the way to go, right? Text messaging is not the way to go. While it is convenient because it's not an application, so it virtually works on any phone, any platform, because there is no app being installed. As long as a phone has the SMS feature, you'll be able to use it. So there's a great outreach to your users, but there's also the whole con of not being able to display rich content. Now, the way I think about it is this is actually a pretty interesting concept, and I think the most important part of it is to be able to find the right balance between having an invisible interface or having a fully featured interface. And we can actually think about how we can incorporate some of the benefits that invisible apps bring to us. For example, simplicity and convenience, but at the same time, still creating engagement through feedback and through users to keep them coming back to your application. And it all sounds very conceptual, but we'll look into some real-world examples, some apps that are out there, and we'll dissect them and sort of figure out how they're being implemented. Because I think that these examples really show some of that behavior, and it's really important for us to build these seamless user experiences. So quick research report, quick slide on the research report from Localytics. They mentioned that 20% of all apps are actually opened only once. Now, this doesn't really sound that bad, right? It's only 20% of them, so maybe 1 out of 5 apps that are installed on a user's phone only gets opened once. But it is bad because if you think about it, how can that be possible, right? Like, it's something that we want to understand why it happens and try to avoid such type of scenarios with our own apps. And another good quote is, the average app session lasts just about a minute. And if you think about it, that's not a whole lot of time, right? That's very little time for you to engage your users and to do things for them or to show them interesting content. But there are still billion-dollar businesses that can capture users' attention with just an average of under a minute. And it is quite amazing. So it's super important for us to understand how we can maximize that time, that 1 minute that we have, to either accomplish what the user wants to do or show personalized content, curated content to keep the user engaged and last longer than a minute. So how do we make that count, right? One of the ways we can do that is by automating some of the tasks that we do within our applications and not really needing the users, not anything that we don't need users' input or feedback. We can do that behind the scenes and then display that content in the end for the user. So we're maximizing the amount of time we have when the user's actually in the application. And don't get me wrong, it is a hard task. It's not easy finding ways to simplify things and automate things within your application, but it is one of the things that I think it's worth spending time on solving and thinking about. And as you probably know, iOS does have a pretty comprehensive set of background services that you can use within your applications. And some of them that would be of interest to us could be location update, right? So the screen's a little bit cut off. It's okay here. So you can actually regularly get location data or information even when your app is running in the background. We could make use of background fetching, for example, being able to download and consume small amounts of content while your app is running in the background. And what your app basically needs to do is register with the system, tell the system that you want to be waken up when there is opportunity to run. So for example, if there happens to be like free CPU cycles, the OS actually decides which app gets a chance to run and gets to execute code. Now, the thing you have to be careful with is that if you take too long to execute, it actually affects the chances of your app being able to be waken up again in the future by the system. So basically, you want to keep your functions short and sweet so that you guarantee that the next time around, you'll have a better chance of running again. So if you take too long, the OS will not allow you to do that again and again. And last one here, remote notifications. It's also useful, and it's being used to initiate the download of content when a notification comes in. So in a traditional push notification, right, when a push notification comes in and your app gets launched, that's when your app starts to download content to download new content to display to the user. But with the remote notification permission, you're able to basically. What happens is your app gets waken up as soon as the push notification comes in. So Apple says that the approximate time that your app gets waken up is the same time as when your user actually sees the notification on the screen. So the whole point of this is to be able to minimize the delay between when your user clicks on the notification and opens the app to the point where you've already downloaded the content and ready to display. So that's some of the things that, small things that you can do to improve the whole user experience. So let's look at some examples here. I'm not sure if you guys used the Google Now implementation on the iOS app And one of my favorite features for this is the appointment reminders. So unlike any other calendar application where it might give you a reminder 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes before the appointment actually happens, what Google now does is it takes information about your next meeting, such as your location, takes information about your current location, and then it tries to compute the approximate amount of time it takes to get to your next meeting. And then it decides when it should notify yourself. And if you think about it, it makes a whole lot of sense, because if my upcoming meeting takes me an hour to get to by train, but the meeting reminder comes in 15 minutes before that, then it's completely useless, right? And obviously, I didn't write the app itself, but I think it's worth taking a look at behind the scenes and how this could possibly be implemented using background services on iOS. So basically, it can be summarized with 4 different steps, right? Location, reading the calendar, calculating the commute time, and then displaying the actual notification to the user. And if you've used location services on iOS, you'll probably know that there's basically 3 modes for location services, 2 of which are for running in the background. So the first mode is just the normal GPS location mode, where if your app is in the foreground, you can get a constant stream of location data, of location updates. Now the 2 modes that you'll see if you're running on background is the significant change location, as well as the background location services. So the traditional, or the significant change location is basically Apple's recommendation when it comes to listening for location services. So the whole point of this significant change is that your app only gets update when like the title says, the location changes significantly. So it's only applicable for apps that require less precision on location data to be able to save battery, for example, on the device itself. And if your app does require high precision, then you'll probably be using what we will go through in the next slide. And essentially, the code snippet here just explains how that works. You're just setting up a delegate to your location manager and ask it to basically start monitoring. And when your app is running in the background, your app will get waken up, and you'll get a chance to receive the location update and then execute a bit of logic, depending on what you want to do with that location. And the second mode is just the typical background location services. So it's very similar to the foreground, except the stream of location data that comes through are less because you are running in the background. So this would probably be suitable for apps that require high precision of location data. For example, if you're building a fitness app and you're trying to trace the routes of the user jogging or running. Or if you're building a navigation app and you need to constantly know where the user is so that you can advise him on directions. That's when you would be using that kind of mode. And the implementation itself is fairly much the same. It's not very different. Again, you're assigning a delegate to it and then executing code when your app gets waken up in the background. And the next one here is reading calendar events. So it's very simple, right? Once you get the location, you need to find out where the user is going to go for the next calendar appointment. So it basically just uses the calendar APIs to retrieve the next calendar event and then extract out the time as well as the location of the event itself. And implementation is quite straightforward. You can actually find a lot of these samples online as well in the Apple tutorials or the example section. Basically, when you're trying to extract a event out of the calendar, you just need to. There's 2 ways of extracting it. One is through the event ID. So if you know the ID of the event, then you can just query for it. And the other way is searching it through range. So you provide a start date and an end date, and the calendar API will return you the list of events, and you'll just have to parse through them to find the one that's upcoming. And then afterwards, you can easily get the location data or the meeting location out of that calendar event. And then calculating the commute, there are actually APIs that can help you with that. Now, Google doesn't have a native SDK on iOS for Directions API, which you can use to commute the time. It only has a REST API. But if you're actually, if you're just using the Apple Maps services, you can actually use MapKit to determine the ETA. So you can see here on the red box, you can set the transportation type to. Is it blinking? Yeah. Should I try to unplug and plug in? Crossing my fingers. So the code snippet here uses MapKit, MK directions, to be able to calculate that ETA. So you're basically just setting the location, you're setting the transport type. So that's something that you probably have to maybe guess or allow the user to set a preference, what type of transportation mode they might be using. And last but not least, once you get the results, you'll then also want to display that result as a notification to remind the user that, hey, it's time to leave your current location if you want to make it to your next appointment in time. And all of this, you can see, is done in the background, right? So, without Google Now, like if anyone wanted to do this, they would probably, turn on their Google Maps, punch in their current location, their destination, pick the mode of transportation they want to use, wait for it to calculate the ETA, and then be like, okay, so I need to leave this house by. No, it takes me half an hour to get there, so I need to leave half an hour before the event. But Google automates this task in the background, so it streamlines everything for you and just delivers to you the end result that you need. So that's sort of the app itself is not invisible, but there are certain features that exhibit this type of experience. So it's basically doing things in the background, automating to create a seamless experience for the user. Now, another app that I really like is Uber. I'm sure everyone, most of you guys have taken an Uber maybe. Who hasn't? Who has taken an Uber? Yeah, quite a lot of people. So you'll probably know how it works when you download the app, you set up Uber, you set up your payment information, your credit cards, and then whenever you take a ride, everything charges to your credit card. But similar, it's very similar to a lot of taxi apps out there. There's a lot of different alternatives. But I think one of the biggest differentiators for Uber, and one of the features that I like the most myself, is being able to just have the charges charged to my credit card, and then I just get off the ride without even having to think about it, right? Yes. Okay, let's give this a try. So so one of the biggest factors I like is the ability to just charge on my credit card, and everything happens in the background. So from the point where I take out my app, I request for a cab ride, I get on the cab, I punch in my destination, I get off, and the transaction happens behind the scenes without me needing to confirm anything. And I don't know if you guys know who processes the payments for Uber. Little advertisements. But it's us, it's Braintree. So what we do as part of Braintree is we provide tools, because this is the experience that we want in not just in this taxi scenario, but in a lot of different payment scenarios. We want to make the payment as seamless as possible. So we do provide tools like Tokenization and the Vault, where Tokenization allows you to basically take credit card data, sensitive credit card data, and it turns it into non-sensitive information like a payment method nonce. That's what we call a token. So this token here is completely useless to anybody else except for us. We're the only ones who understands it. And with the Vault, it allows developers and merchants to be able to use this payment method nonce without knowing the credit card details, and to save it on our secure servers. So once you save a payment method token, anytime you need to use it to charge your customers again, we'll be able to just take this and then create a transaction out of it. So this is, by having these type of tools, it allows merchants to be able to implement that seamless experience, right? And it's almost just invisible to the user. As a user, you don't need to know that the transaction happens. You will get a notification through a receipt to confirm the final charges, but there's nothing you need to do. And actually, most of the time when I take Uber, I just, after I request the ride, I get on the car and I just close the application. I just put it in my pocket. as if because I don't need to actually use it anymore. And lastly, another app called Robin. It's a really, really cool app, and it's basically a meeting room management solution. So imagine, well, it requires iPads. So if you adopt their solution, if you purchase a solution, you get iPads that you can place in front of each of the meeting rooms, and you can actually set up meetings through the iPad or through your device, and everything's all synced to Exchange, to Gmail, like, for example. So everyone has access to it. Now, the cool thing about this is that they also use beacons to be able to detect the user's location. So if you imagine a scenario where I'm going to my meeting, and as long as I don't need to open my app, I just need to keep my phone in my pocket and the app running in the background. When the app detects that it's in the region of the beacon, right in front of the meeting room, it will notify the iPad device, right, through probably just a network call. And then the iPad will display my display picture, to show that it recognizes me. And then it shows also the names and the pictures of the people who are already in the meeting room. So again, this experience, this is slightly different. So they use sort of like a second screen to be able to display information to the user, right? So it doesn't always have to be from your app. If you're in an environment where there are screens that are possible, for example, like we learned about tvOS today, the Apple TV. If you're writing an app, you don't always have to use your phone. You can actually think about passing that interface to the tvOS when the user, for example, walks into the room. So not everything has to happen on the phone. The interface can change between devices. And oh yeah, the other cool feature is if you're in an empty room, or if there's an empty room and you need to book it, you don't actually have to do anything. You just walk in, it recognizes that it's you, and then it'll book out that meeting room for a specified period of time for you. So everything is all really, really convenient and pretty much invisible to the users themselves. So as you're thinking about how you want to improve your app, or automate your tasks, or make your apps a little bit smarter, there are some things that you should take into consideration as you're thinking about how to do that. And one is you don't want to automate everything. You know, as much as we've seen how automation can help create seamless experiences, it's not always the best idea, especially if you're trying to automate everything, then it leaves no chance for you to engage the user. And that's what I mean when I say you have to find the right balance, right? Because the whole point of building an app is to be able to show your user cool stuff. And it's not just about notifying your user. So you want to create opportunities where you can lead the user to open your application when it's convenient for them. And it's also very important to not make all the decision making yourself within your application. Try to leave the final decision for the users because it gives them the feeling of control, right? And you do everything in the background and they're okay with that, but typically they want to make that final decision, unless it's a very trivial one, of course. And if you take Swarm, for example, it's basically the check-in app that sort of branched out of Foursquare. It guesses what point of interest you're in, and 80% of the time it's right. And for me, it's quite impressive. Even when I'm at a mall in a particular restaurant, it's able to know which restaurant I'm at. But even though it's very, very accurate, it doesn't make the decision of checking you in. And it's actually a really, really good reason for that, because if it guesses the location right and it tells you, then it impresses you, and as a user, you would just easily slide and take action on it and just click the check-in button. But in the case where it guesses where the location is and it guesses wrong, it doesn't actually make any mistakes, right? Because it hasn't done anything harmful. It didn't make any decisions for you. So as a user, you'll look at it and go, hey, that's not where I'm at, so I'm just going to swipe away and just forget about it, right? So it's basically a win-win situation in terms of how the user looks at your application and gets feedback from your application. And the second one is, I mentioned about it as well. Make good use of notifications, but use it sparingly, right? You don't want to spam too many notifications where the user will just totally disable it, and you won't, from that point, you wouldn't be able to reach your user ever again. And as nice as it is to do everything behind the scenes, you do want to notify the user about their progress along the way. If later down the road they are comfortable with you handling everything, then you can provide them a configurable option to say, from now on, I'll carry on this task repeatedly, and you don't need to be notified. So you always want to give options to the user and not be in total control. Usage patterns is also quite important. It's important to recognize usage patterns and user behavior because it ultimately gives you the ability to predict and suggest actions that you can do for the user. So, for example, understanding what time of the day a user frequently visits your application. Say, if for myself, probably when I'm commuting to work during 8 or 9 a.m. And that's probably the only time I I read Flipboard, which is like the news app. If you're able to understand when the user interacts with it, you can actually increase the effectiveness of your notifications as well, because the user is going to be free at that particular time. That's probably the time where you want to take the chance to and show them the notification so that it increases the chances of them taking further action after the notification appears, which is basically opening your application. That's what you want in the end. So, there's tons of tools out there that can help gather analytics, mobile analytics, for you can use app analytics, or if you're looking for, third-party, there's Flurry and Google Analytics seems to be a pretty popular choice as well. So do gather analytics, understand the user behavior, and that will help you bring better user engagement as well. Location we've seen is probably one of the most important piece of information that you can get from the user and be able to understand what they want to do and what you can do for them at that particular location. And this includes both outdoor and indoor, right? If they're outdoor, you'll be using GPS. If they're indoor, you can consider using something like beacons, which gives you a better approximation of the user location. But also remember to pick the right mode, as I talked about the significant change mode and the normal background mode, because you do want to conserve battery and not end up having the user uninstall your application because it's a battery hog. And the last one is probably the most important one, I feel, being able to establish trust. Especially if you're developing a new app, in the initial phase, you don't want to try to do everything for the user because they're not familiar with your application. They don't even know if they want to trust having your application do things for them. What will help is if you provide tutorial screens or about screens that further tells the user what your application does, so that they're familiar with it. And over time, that's where you sort of establish trust, you establish credibility, and that's when you can start doing things without the user having to do it themselves. You can automate things in the background. And that brings me to the end of the presentations. So hope you got something out of this, and I think we'll have time for questions. Cool.
Any questions?
I think everybody's waiting for the beer.
Any questions?
I'll be at the after party as well. So if you want to talk offline, feel free to just bump into me. Thank you.